This chilling story begins with a woman whose outward charm masked inner darkness. Stacey Castor, a seemingly devoted wife and mother, would become known as the Black Widow, leaving a trail of death and deception in her wake. Over the span of a few short years, both of Castor's husbands would die under mysterious circumstances, followed by the near-fatal poisoning of her own daughter in a desperate attempt to conceal her crimes. A woman who sacrificed the lives of those closest to her, all to satisfy her own greed and hunger for control. A master manipulator, Castor almost got away with murder, if not for the tireless efforts of detectives who saw through her web of lies. This is the story of the Black Widow, a woman whose cold-blooded crimes shocked a community and captured the morbid fascination of a nation. Early life of Stacey Castor. Stacey Castor was born Stacey Ruth Daniels on July 24, 1967, in the small town of Weedsport, New York. From the outside, her early life appeared relatively normal and stable. As a young woman, Stacey worked as an office manager, and in 1988, she married her first husband, Michael Wallace. The couple went on to have two daughters together, Ashley, born in 1988, and Bree, born a few years later in 1991. But behind closed doors, the Wallace marriage was far from idyllic. Stacey and Michael worked opposite shifts to make ends meet, with her on the day shift as an ambulance dispatcher and him working nights as a mechanic. Friends would later recall that Michael struggled with substance abuse, which put a strain on the relationship. The couple had even discussed the possibility of getting a divorce, but that never came to pass. On the afternoon of January 11, 2000, a shocking discovery occurred. 38-year-old Michael Wallace was found unresponsive on the living room sofa by his father-in-law. He was rushed to the hospital, but soon pronounced dead. An autopsy determined he had died of a heart attack, and no foul play was suspected at the time. Stacey was now a widow at age 32 with two young daughters to support. Marriage to David Castor. Just 8 months after losing her first husband, Stacey married 41-year-old David Castor, a man she had been introduced to through her boss in 2021. David was the owner of an air conditioning company where Stacey worked. From the outside, they appeared to be a happy, prosperous couple living a comfortable life in the suburbs of Syracuse, New York. But the marriage quickly became troubled. Heated arguments and alleged infidelity became a feature of their tumultuous relationship, and again, talks of divorce begun to spring up. One can also speculate that domestic issues had become abusive. David confided in family members that he slept with his bedroom door locked because he feared his wife. The investigation and shocking discovery. On August 22, 2005, came a disturbing replay of events. In a frantic 911 call, Stacey told the operator she was worried her husband David had locked himself in their bedroom and committed suicide. Responding officers had to break down the locked door. Inside, they found 48-year-old David Castor lying naked and unresponsive on the bed. He was pronounced dead at the scene. At the home, detectives made a series of odd discoveries. A short glass tumbler filled with a bright green liquid rested on David's nightstand, alongside a bottle of antifreeze. A turkey baster was also found in the kitchen garbage. David's body was sent for an autopsy and toxicology testing. Meanwhile, investigators began delving into Stacey's background and examining the eerie similarities between the deaths of her two husbands. As suspicions mounted, detectives made the decision to exhume the body of Stacey's first husband, Michael Wallace, for testing, producing a shocking revelation. New toxicology tests revealed his body contained lethal levels of ethylene glycol, a key ingredient in automotive antifreeze. Chronic exposure to ethylene glycol can mimic symptoms of a heart attack. Investigators now had evidence that both of Stacey Castor's husbands had suspiciously died from the same form of poisoning. The ultimate betrayal. With law enforcement closing in and fearing she would soon be discovered, Stacey Castor took the unthinkable step of trying to eliminate the one person she feared could implicate her in the murders: her own 19-year-old daughter Ashley. In a sickening twist, Stacey staged an apparent murder-suicide, poisoning Ashley with a lethal cocktail of alcohol and crushed pills mixed in a drink. She then typed out a 750-word suicide note on the family computer, claiming to be written by Ashley. In the note, Ashley purportedly confessed to killing both her father and stepfather, and was now taking her own life, unable to bear the crushing guilt any longer. On the morning of September 14, 2007, Ashley was found comatose in her bed by her younger sister Bree. She had a black eye, bruises on her arms, and was frothing at the mouth. Rushed to the hospital in critical condition, doctors said Ashley was only minutes from death. Doctors pumped her stomach and put her in a medically induced coma to reduce the swelling in her brain. Miraculously, Ashley survived the attempt on her life. When she regained consciousness, she was adamant she had not tried to kill herself and had no memory of writing a suicide note. Computer forensic analysis soon confirmed the suicide note had been written by Stacey Castor, not Ashley. The timestamp showed it was typed on the family computer during a 10-minute window when cell phone records proved Ashley was passed out in her bed. Investigators also found evidence of Stacey researching fatal doses of alcohol and drugs in the days before Ashley's poisoning. The pieces of the sinister puzzle were falling into place. The arrest. In 2007, Stacey Castor was arrested and charged with second-degree murder for the death of her second husband David Castor, and attempted murder for the poisoning of her daughter Ashley Wallace. Facing serious charges, she turned to defense attorney Chuck Keller for help. Keller planned to argue that Ashley was actually the one responsible for David's death, and that she had also tried to take her own life. However, prosecutor William Fitzpatrick was confident in the evidence against Castor. The case had many strong forensic elements that pointed to her guilt: computer data, DNA, and expert analysis of the faked suicide note. Fitzpatrick was determined to make sure all of this evidence was presented clearly to secure a conviction against Castor. Prosecutors argued she was motivated by greed, hoping to cash in on David's life insurance money. They believed she also killed her first husband, Michael Wallace, for the same reason back in 2000, although she was never officially charged with his death. The Black Widow trial. In January 2009, the so-called Black Widow went on trial in a case that captured national attention. The prosecution's case was damning. They had Stacey's fingerprints on the antifreeze bottle and glass in David's room. They had computer forensic evidence proving she forged the phony suicide note. But most powerful of all, they had the emotional testimony of Ashley Wallace herself, telling the jury how her own mother had tried to kill her and frame her for murder. Throughout the trial, Stacey Castor maintained her innocence, adamantly suggesting that Ashley was the real killer. But her desperate attempts to shift blame on her daughter fell flat. After 3 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for only 4 hours before returning a unanimous verdict of guilt on all counts. Stacey Castor, the Black Widow, was sentenced to the maximum penalty of 51 years to life in prison. She would not be eligible for parole until age 87. In a final statement to the court, Castor acknowledged the evidence against her was substantial, but stopped short of admitting guilt, saying only, "I must bear responsibility." She said she accepted her punishment in the hopes it would allow her family to heal. But for Ashley Wallace, the wounds inflicted by her mother's ultimate betrayal would last a lifetime. As she addressed the court at Castor's sentencing, Ashley said through tears, "She took away the only person in the world that I had. She was my best friend, and she tried to kill me. I wish she would say sorry for everything she did." Even after being found guilty and sentenced to 51 years in prison, Stacey Castor refused to admit she had done anything wrong. From her prison cell at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility, she continued to claim she was innocent of killing her husbands and trying to murder her daughter Ashley. In a TV interview after the trial, Castor said she was shocked by the verdict and blamed Ashley for what happened. She showed some sympathy for her younger daughter Bray, calling her an innocent victim, but expressed no remorse for her crimes. Castor's own mother and stepfather stood by her. However, both Ashley and Bree were relieved by the guilty verdict. They cut off contact with their mother, deeply hurt that she never apologized. Psychiatrist Dr. James Knoll explained that Castor fits the profile of a Black Widow-type killer who murders husbands for financial gain, rather than a typical serial killer. He noted that if guilty, Castor's lack of remorse and willingness to sacrifice her own child to protect herself showed psychopathic traits. Knoll said killers like Castor will deny to the bitter end, unable to ever admit the truth, even to themselves. Stacey Castor died of a heart attack in her prison cell on June 11, 2016 at the age of 48. She took any secrets about her husband's murders with her to the grave. In the end, this woman who tore apart her own family in the most vicious way possible died alone in a prison cell, forever branded as the Black Widow. The Black Widow's story is about more than just the evil that one woman was capable of. It's also about the dogged pursuit of justice to bring a killer to account, and the strength of a daughter who survived the ultimate maternal betrayal. Ashley Wallace endured unspeakable trauma, but refused to let it define her. She found the courage to stand up to her mother and help ensure she would never harm anyone else. Today, Ashley Wallace has rebuilt her life. She is married and focused on moving forward, but the scars of her past remain. As she said after her mother's conviction, "I know that I didn't do anything wrong. As hard as it is to get up every day and put a smile on my face, I know that I have to. Because if I don't, then Stacey won. The Black Widow may be gone, but for her daughter, the struggle to heal from her poison continues." Ashley Wallace is the true survivor of this tragic tale. In our next case, we delve into the horrific murder of Tristan Bailey. 13-year-old Tristan Bailey had her whole life ahead of her until it was brutally cut short one night in the woods near her Florida home. Stabbed over 100 times by a teenage boy she thought was a friend, Tristan's shocking murder stunned her quiet community. The promising young cheerleader became the victim of a crime too horrific to imagine. This is the heartbreaking story of what happened to Tristan Bailey. Tristan's early life. Tristan Tyne Bailey came into the world on January 18, 2008, to parents Forrest and Stacey Bailey. The youngest of 5 siblings, Tristan spent her first 4 years in Singapore before the family moved to St. Johns County, Florida. Growing up, Tristan's bright smile and kind heart touched everyone she met. Friends and family described her as an energetic, powerful presence who always stood up for others. Her mom, Stacey, said, "She was just a powerful child that was able to give a lot to so many." By age 13, Tristan was in 7th grade at Patriot Oaks Academy, where she stood out as a popular student and talented cheerleader with an infectious positive attitude. She loved cheering on her school's teams under the Florida sun. At home, she was an amazing sister and daughter who brought joy and laughter. Tristan spent her free time like any typical teenage girl, making TikTok dance videos, chatting and laughing with friends, and dreaming of the future. No one could have predicted the evil that would soon steal this vibrant young life. Tristan's story is a reminder that violence can shatter even the most peaceful seeming place, and that unspeakable cruelty sometimes hides behind a familiar face. The fateful night. On Saturday, May 8, 2021, Tristan was at home, excitedly preparing to celebrate Mother's Day with her family the next day. She went to bed that night not knowing she would never see her mother again. In the early morning darkness of May 9th, 13-year-old Tristan snuck out of her house around 1 a.m., lured by text messages from a 14-year-old boy at her school named Aiden Fucci. Unbeknownst to her family, Tristan left her home to go meet Aiden. A surveillance camera captured chilling footage of Tristan and Aiden walking together into a wooded area at the end of Saddlestone Drive around 1:15 a.m. It was the last time Tristan would be seen alive. Less than 2 hours later, just before 3:30 a.m., that same surveillance camera recorded Aiden, alone now, running back out of the woods towards his house. His clothes appeared wet and muddy. Over the next few hours, he texted friends with strange messages, including "help find Tristan" and photos of him smiling in the back of a police car. Meanwhile, on Mother's Day morning, Tristan's family grew worried when she didn't come down for the breakfast celebration. They checked her room and realized she was missing. After searching the nearby area, Tristan's mom, Stacey, called 911 at 10 a.m. to report her daughter missing. As police and volunteers combed the area looking for the 13-year-old cheerleader, a horrible discovery in the woods would soon shatter their world. The brutal crime scene. Around 6 p.m. on May 9th, a community resident out walking made a grim discovery near a retention pond in the woods at the end of Saddlestone Drive. A young girl's lifeless body lay on the ground, covered in blood and stab wounds. By 8 p.m., it was confirmed the body belonged to missing 13-year-old Tristan Bailey. The crime scene told a horrific story of a frenzied knife attack on an innocent child. Tristan had been stabbed a staggering 114 times all over her body, head and hands. 49 of the wounds were defensive, showing how desperately Tristan fought back against her assailant. The medical examiner determined the cause of death to be the sheer blood loss from the volume of sharp force trauma. It was a killing of unimaginable brutality and violence, with many of the stab wounds penetrating deep into bone. Tristan's young body was ravaged by slash marks, punctures, and gaping wounds from the relentless onslaught. In addition, 2 haunting clues hinted at the killer's dark mindset. The word karma was found scrawled on Tristan's left ankle, and a smiley face was drawn on her right ankle. Chillingly, her body had been posed after the stabbing frenzy ended. This was the work of a calculated, merciless killer who felt no remorse. As police processed the disturbing scene, they found a key piece of evidence submerged in the retention pond, a blood-stained buck knife with a broken-off tip. The knife tip was later recovered from Tristan's scalp. This knife would directly tie the crime to 14-year-old Aiden Fucci. The investigation. While searching for Tristan, police visited Aiden Fucci's home to ask what he knew. Aiden claimed he had been with Tristan the night before, and that they got into an argument in the woods. He said he pushed her, and she fell and hit her head. Then he walked away. However, police weren't buying Aiden's story, especially once the surveillance video and the state of Tristan's body was revealed. Aiden's strange social media posts about looking for Tristan while in a cop car also signaled something more sinister. The morning after the murder, deputies searched Aiden's home. In his bedroom, they found a knife sheath that matched the murder weapon. Blood-stained clothes belonging to Aiden were also collected. Around 3 a.m., based on the evidence, Aiden Fucci was arrested for Tristan's murder. The charge would later be increased to first-degree premeditated murder. As investigators dug into Aiden's background, disturbing red flags quickly emerged. Friends and classmates revealed Aiden had a long-time fascination with knives, violence, and death. He carried knives regularly and even named them. Perhaps most chillingly, Aiden frequently talked about wanting to experience what killing someone felt like. Aiden's ex-girlfriend Sophie Bauman recounted times Aiden would pretend to stab her with his pocket knife, and detailed him telling her about violent voices in his head urging him to kill when angry. All the signs pointed to a killer in the making. Tragically, these warning signs weren't heeded in time to save Tristan's life. In the end, the mountain of forensic evidence against Aiden Fucci for Tristan's brutal murder was undeniable. The blood-stained knife tied his DNA to the murder weapon. The video of them entering the woods together, Aiden's bloody clothes, and the matching knife sheath in his bedroom. His own statements putting himself at the scene. There was no doubt he viciously stabbed Tristan to death in the woods that night. For Tristan's shattered family, who lost their shining light in the most unthinkable way, the question of why haunts them. What could make a 14-year-old boy unleash such monstrous violence on a friend? Tristan's siblings cried, remembering her as the best sister, and spoke of her forever unfulfilled potential. Theories on motive. We may never fully understand the motive behind such a senseless act, but experts have theories. Some suggest Aiden Fucci may have developed an unhealthy fixation on Tristan that turned deadly when she rejected his desired sexual advances that night. Others point to Aiden's long-held obsession with violence and death. Perhaps he finally acted on his depraved fantasy of experiencing murder. The sheer number of stab wounds, 114 in total, indicate an explosive release of rage and savagery once the stabbing began. In the end, trying to rationalize an act of pure evil is impossible. There can be no justification for slaughtering an innocent 13-year-old girl who trusted the wrong person. Aiden's lack of true remorse, posing her body, and boasting to friends after the murder show how profoundly sinister his psyche is. The legal case. Once arrested, 14-year-old Aiden Fucci was charged as an adult with first-degree murder due to the brutality of the crime. He was held without bond under close watch as he awaited trial. If convicted, Aiden faced up to life in prison. Aiden's mother, Crystal Smith, was also arrested for tampering with evidence after home surveillance video allegedly showed her washing or scrubbing a pair of blue jeans in a bathroom sink at their residence. According to the arrest affidavit, the jeans and the bathroom sink drain tested positive for the presence of blood. Investigators said an unidentified witness was involved in the case against Crystal Smith. She was later released while awaiting further legal proceedings. For nearly 2 years, Aiden maintained his innocence, forcing Tristan's family to endure drawn-out legal proceedings. All the while, evidence mounted of his guilt. Then, in a surprise move in February 2023, Aiden changed his plea to guilty as charged just before jury selection was to begin. At the contentious sentencing hearing, Tristan's loved ones finally confronted her unrepentant killer. With heart-wrenching victim impact statements, they made Aiden face the immense loss and grief his savagery caused. Alexis Bailey dropped 114 aqua pebbles, one by one, into a glass jar, each representing a stab wound her sister suffered. Prosecutors pushed for a maximum sentence to ensure the dangerous teen killer could never walk free to hurt anyone else. Aiden himself remained largely stoic and unemotional, facing the people whose lives he destroyed. At age 16, Aiden was sentenced to life in prison for the first-degree murder of Tristan Bailey. He will be eligible for review after 25 years served. The judge called this the most difficult and shocking case of his career, noting the stark lack of any true motive besides the desire to brutally take a life. No greed, no revenge, no passionate rage, just a killer's urge to feel the sensation of snuffing out a bright light. Impact on the community. The brutal murder of 13-year-old Tristan Bailey sent shockwaves of fear and grief through her tight-knit Florida community. Parents hugged their kids tighter, and students struggled to accept that the killer walked among them every day at school. Neighbors tied teal ribbons around trees in honor of Tristan's favorite color. Friends gathered at makeshift memorials to lay flowers and remember the smiling girl who always lifted others' spirits. Tristan's cheer team retired her number 28 jersey for the rest of the season. Yet the pain ran deepest for Tristan's heartbroken family, who had to learn to live without their precious daughter and sister. They described her as a firefly whose flame of potential was cruelly snuffed out forever by a remorseless killer. Birthdays, graduations, holidays, Tristan will never be there beside them again. As a community, many are left to wonder if more could have been done to prevent this horrific slaying. Why didn't Aiden Fucci receive intervention for his long-standing obsession with violence and knives? How do we keep our kids safe when killers hide in plain sight in our schools and neighborhoods? There are no easy answers, But Tristan's senseless death sparked important conversations about being alert to warning signs in teens and taking threats seriously. Stopping killers before they act is the only way to prevent more lives from being stolen. In the end, Tristan Bailey's legacy will be one of light, love, and joy. Her family started a foundation in her name to empower other young cheerleaders to soar after their dreams, the dreams Tristan will never get to fulfill herself. They hope to create a culture of kindness and watching out for others in her honor. While Tristan's story ends in tragedy, there is still hope that people will learn from it. We must fight for a world where no more innocent children become victims of senseless violence, where those who fantasize about brutality are stopped before they strike, where the beauty of a smiling 13-year-old girl is treasured and protected. Let us never forget Tristan Bailey, and let her light shine on through the darkness as a reminder of the good we must preserve. The battle against evil continues, and it's a battle we cannot afford to lose. In our next case, a tragic mystery involving two women with the same name challenges the idea of a deadly coincidence. The murders of two women named Mary Morris remains a mystery in Houston, Texas. 48-year-old Mary Lou Henderson Morris was killed first. Then 4 days later, 39-year-old Mary McGinnis Morris also tragically met her demise. Their bodies were discovered near the same area, sparking many theories about the cases. Police have struggled to determine if the same perpetrator committed both crimes, or if it was merely a strange coincidence that two women with identical names were targeted in such a similar fashion. To this day, the truth behind what happened to the two Mary Morris victims continues to confound and fascinate investigators as well as the public. The mystery deaths of Mary Morris. Our story begins on the morning of October 12, 2000 in Baytown, Texas. 48-year-old Mary Lou Henderson Morris kissed her husband Jay Morris goodbye and left for work at 6 a.m. just like she did every weekday. Mary Lou had been married to her husband Jay Morris for 5 years. They had a very loving relationship, and by all accounts, Mary had a good relationship with most people she knew. She was described as outgoing and bubbly by colleagues and friends, and was known for always making a positive impression on people. In her 15 years at Chase Bank, she had never missed a day at work. But this morning would be different. Mary Lou Henderson would never make it to the office. Red flags immediately surfaced when Mary Lou failed to show up for work that fateful morning. Her diligent nature and spotless attendance record made her absence seem suspicious. Around noon, her worried supervisor from Chase Bank called the Morris household to check if Mary Lou was homesick or had simply forgotten to call in. But Jay confirmed she never returned after leaving for her regular morning commute. Throughout the day, Mary Lou's increasingly frantic husband Jay repeatedly tried calling his wife's cell phone to no avail. With Mary Lou's whereabouts growing more inexplicable by the hour, dread took hold as her loved ones mobilized to track her down. Unknown to them, at 10:20 a.m. on the very morning of Mary Lou's disappearance, firefighters responded to reports of smoke billowing from a nearby wooded area. Located only 3 miles from the Morris family home, first responders assumed the haze came from a pile of burning leaves and did not investigate the scene further. This fateful decision allowed precious time to slip away. Later that afternoon, an off-road driver detected the smoke's true sinister origin. Mary Lou's car fully engulfed in raging flames, with a charred body trapped inside burnt past recognition. Dental records would subsequently confirm the victim's identity as the missing Mary Lou. On closer inspection, the location itself provoked further unease and questions. Mary Lou's car was found abandoned in the opposite direction from her normal route to work. This deviation implied Mary Lou had made an unexpected, perhaps forced detour at some point during her routine drive that morning. While Mary Lou's purse and wedding ring seemed to be missing from the grisly scene, detectives doubted robbery factored as the motive. No other items of value were taken, making the missing ring feel more like a personal cynical trophy than a financially motivated crime. With no known disputes or enemies, Mary Lou's savage murder seemed bewildering in its randomness and brutality. As investigators searched in vain for suspects or leads down every avenue, the mystery only deepened around the events preceding this innocent woman's terrifying demise. On the day of Mary Lou Morris' funeral, her daughter, Marion Blaylock, called the medical examiner's office, hoping to find her mother's jewelry so she could be buried with it. They assured her that the funeral home would pick it up when they come to retrieve the body. Confused, Marilyn asserted that the body had already been picked up. Again, the medical examiner maintained that the body of Mary Morris was still there. 4 days after Mary Lou Morris' death, the body of 39-year-old Mary McGinnis Morris was found in her car in nearly the same spot and unbelievably with the same first and last name as the recent victim. Police began investigating the second Mary's life. She was a nurse in charge of several medical clinics for a large company. Like Mary Lou, she was popular and well-liked. She had an exceptional work ethic, often going over and beyond her obligations to meet needs, including working 14-hour-a-day shifts without thinking twice. However, detectives learned that she had been afraid of one new male coworker at her nursing job. She had disclosed her concerns to a close friend, Lori Gemmell, and even suggested to her that she believed he was capable of hurting her, or worse. One evening, a few weekends before her death, Mary McGinnis walked into her office to find her workspace out of place. Suspecting her co-worker, she approached his desk. On a written note were the words, "Death to her." That same day, she allegedly informed her husband Mike of her terror. Seeking a sense of security, she asked him for a gun. After showing Mary how to handle and use it, Mike placed the gun under the driver's seat of her car. A tragic 911 call. In one of her last documented encounters, Mary met with her friend Lori at the medical clinic to give her a flu shot. Lori later informed police Mary seemed in good spirits that Sunday afternoon as she went about her usual weekend routines, planning to complete some work at the clinic, run some errands around town, and head home to make a nice dinner later that evening. According to Lori, at approximately 4:30 p.m., she received an abrupt, anxious phone call from Mary. While stopping by the local drugstore, Mary claimed she spotted an unknown man who deeply unsettled her and gave her the creeps. Feeling freshly terrified, Mary told Lori she would quickly return to the clinic to finish up work before rushing straight home. Tragically, Mary would never make it back to safety. Just 12 fateful minutes after that disturbing call at 4:47 p.m., a local 911 operator fielded Mary's final, desperate plea for help. Blood-curdling screams and violent sounds of a struggle permeate the background of the chilling recorded call. By the time emergency responders tracked Mary's location and arrived at the murder scene, she was already beyond saving. Mary was discovered dead in her car, brutally beaten and shot with her own missing gun from under the passenger seat. Her wedding ring also vanished, the only item taken in what police ruled out as a robbery. The staged suicide scene showed clear signs of a struggle. Blood smears on the inside of the passenger door, keys dropped outside, torn clothes, and bruised wrists. Investigators concluded a targeted assailant ambushed Mary, attempting to disguise the murder as self-inflicted. The medical examiner later confirmed that she suffered extensive blunt force trauma before being shot at close range. Detectives weighed two prime suspects: Mary's husband Mike Morris and the hostile coworker she had crossed at Northwest Mutual Life. Mike had an ironclad alibi of being at the movies with their daughter at the time of Mary's murder. But his behavior raised eyebrows as he refused to take a lie detector test on account of being on anti-anxiety medications and antidepressants, which he thought could skew any polygraph results. He also refused the police to interview their daughter. The coworker was also a key suspect, having left his job after attempting to discredit Mary. but detectives lacked definitive evidence against him. As investigators hit walls of resistance from their central suspects, they grew convinced that whoever murdered Mary maintained an intimate connection or knowledge of her routines and relationships to carry out such a personally vindictive slaying. Police suspicion of Mary's husband deepened upon learning that he hastily hired a defense attorney shortly after her murder. Investigators uncovered increasing evidence of an acrimonious separation. Tensions recently boiled over after Mike angrily confronted Mary about suspicions of an affair with a friend. The potential motive of monetary gain also emerged. Mike stood to collect a hefty $700,000 payout from a life insurance policy on his now deceased wife. Detectives theorized receiving such funds would alleviate Mike's financial woes, providing plausible incentive for murder. Potentially the most damning revelation surfaced regarding Mike's cell phone activity around Mary's death. Mike called her cell phone nearly 2 hours after the estimated time of her murder. Phone records show the call alarmingly connected and lasted 4 full minutes. Mike contends he simply let Mary's phone ring for an extended time, hoping she would eventually pick up. However, the service provider disputed that a phone record could display that duration without an active back-and-forth conversation occurring. This implies Mike, or an accomplice, answered Mary's phone and spoke to whoever was on the other end after her death. When confronted with the improbability of his story, Mike's sole defense rested on claims that a technical glitch must have falsely logged the suspicious 4-minute call. For investigators, this bizarre incident only deepened the shadow over what was appearing to look like the plotting of an embittered spouse. Police hoped continued pressure and surveillance would cause the prime suspect to slip up and reveal anything substantiating his role in the calculated betrayal and slaying of his own wife for financial profit. Coincidence or intentional sequence? The eerie similarities between the slayings of Mary Lou Henderson Morris and Mary McGinnis Morris sparked speculation that both women were tragic victims of the same deadly mistaken identity plot. One prevailing theory suggests a hitman was contracted to assassinate Mary McGinnis for financial gain, but inadvertently targeted Mary Lou Henderson first in error due to the women's physical description, proximity, and name. This plausibility intensified after investigators received an anonymous newspaper tip-off claiming bluntly, "They got the wrong Mary the first time." The missing wedding ring from Mary Lou Henderson's body also matches common trophy-taking practices of contract killers, confirming an intentional kill. However, while intrigued by the pattern, authorities never found direct evidence linking the two homicide cases. Without further proof or additional witness testimonies, they cautiously maintain the similarities could remain just a peculiar coincidence. In contrast, both grieving families fervently insist the lives and deaths of Mary Lou Henderson and Mary McGinnis are intrinsically connected somehow. They argue investigators overlook the slim odds of two strikingly parallel murders occurring randomly within a short span in the same locality. To this day, uncertainty lingers over what exactly happened to the two Mary Morris victims. Perhaps a hitman got poor intel and targeted Mary Lou Henderson by mistake before correcting course to finish the job. Maybe a jealous husband desiring money and freedom hired an assassin to stage his wife's demise as random. Or could the two cases actually be tragic coincidences, merely connected by name and timing? While concrete evidence remains elusive, intriguing clues continue trickling in. The families of both women still seek closure and justice all these years later. As investigators re-examine leads and evaluate alternative theories, we hold out hope the truth may finally emerge about the eerily intertwined fates of Mary Lou Henderson and Mary McGinnis Morris. In our next case, we go from unsolved mystery to senseless killing as we explore the brutal murder of Alexa Bartle. Imagine a young woman, just 20 years old, driving home from work on a quiet spring night. She's chatting and laughing with a friend on the phone, her whole life still ahead of her. Suddenly, in an instant, everything changes forever. A loud crash, shattered glass, then silence. Alexa Bartel had become the random victim of a brutal thrill kill. Her bright future stolen by a senseless act of violence that would shock her entire community. This is the story of a heinous crime, a family's heart-wrenching loss, and a town's quest for justice. A shattered piece. April 19, 2023 seemed like an ordinary evening in Jefferson County, Colorado. But under the cover of darkness, evil was about to strike on the quiet roads. At 10:15 p.m., Uber driver Nathan Tipton was cruising down Highway 93 during his usual shift. Out of nowhere, an explosive sound shook his car. Glancing over, he saw his driver's side windows blasted to pieces. Rattled, Nathan pulled over and called 911 to report the frightening incident. He had no idea he had just become the first target in a sinister spree. Just a half hour later, 20-year-old Alexa Bartel was making her way home from work, laughing and talking on the phone with a friend like any other night. In a flash, their cheerful conversation was cut short by a deafening crash, followed by an eerie silence. Alexa's friend grew concerned when she didn't reply. As soon as her shift ended at 11:05 p.m., she decided to track Alexa's iPhone location, desperately hoping her friend was okay. The brutal discovery. Following the digital trail, Alexa's friend soon faced a waking nightmare. She came upon Alexa's yellow Chevy Spark wrecked in a ditch along Highway 128. Peering through the shattered windshield, she saw Alexa slumped motionless in the driver's seat, her body bloody and still. Fighting shock, she dialed 911 and made a tearful call to Alexa's mother to share the horrific news. Broomfield police officers were first on the grisly scene. They found Alexa battered and pulseless, a gaping hole in her windshield, blood pooling from a massive head wound. Tragically, paramedics pronounced the young woman dead on arrival, her life cut short by an unknown assailant. Investigators immediately recognized this was no simple car crash. Damage analysis by Colorado State Patrol made a chilling determination some kind of heavy object had violently smashed through the windshield from outside, brutally striking Alexa in the head. At the scene, detectives discovered an ominous clue. A large, blood-stained rock weighing nearly 5 pounds, bigger than a softball. Preliminary forensic tests detected Alexa's blood on the crude weapon, all but confirming she was deliberately attacked and killed by someone hurling the boulder at her moving vehicle. But who would commit such a random, ruthless act, and for what reason? As police widened their search, a disturbing picture emerged. Alexa was not the only victim that night. Over a mere 2-hour span, a total of 7 vehicles were maliciously attacked across the area. 2 other drivers sustained minor injuries from shattered glass, with 5 cars total having front windshields bashed in. Alexa's case was the final and fatal blow in what appeared to be a shockingly coordinated series of attacks. Community united in grief. Word of the disturbing crime spree spread quickly through the tight-knit community. Residents were horrified and outraged that such a vicious, senseless attack could happen in their quiet hometown. Alexa's family and friends were overwhelmed by grief at the loss of such a bright, kind young woman who had her whole life ahead of her. As shock turned to anger, the community galvanized around a single mission: to find Alexa's killer and bring them to justice. The Jefferson County Sheriff's Office sprang into action alongside the Boulder County Sheriff, Arvada Police, and Westminster Police. Detectives worked around the clock chasing down leads, while forensic teams processed the crime scenes. They pulled surveillance videos and cell tower data, searching for any clue to identify the perpetrators. Suspects unmasked. A major break finally came on April 25th, less than a week after Alexa's murder. A tipster named Joseph Bopp came forward claiming to have key information. In police interviews, Bopp revealed a chilling story. On the evening of April 19th, Bopp's former co-worker, 18-year-old Joseph Koenig, invited him to hang out. Arriving at Koenig's house, Bopp met up with Koenig, and two other young men, Mitch Carroll Chick and Zachary Quack, both also 18. The group piled into Carroll Chick's black Chevy Silverado pickup truck and started cruising around town. They eventually pulled into a Walmart parking lot. When Bob returned from a restroom break, he was shocked to find the other three grabbing landscaping rocks from the lot's perimeter and filling up the truck's back seat. Bob estimated they loaded up as many heavy stones as they could carry. A disturbing revelation. Sensing the teens had malicious plans for the rocks, Bob became extremely uncomfortable. He knew Koenig had a history of vandalism and property damage and seemed to get a thrill out of destruction. But fearing Koenig's volatility if confronted, Bob stayed quiet. As the truck started moving again, Bob demanded to be taken home, wanting no part of their dangerous scheme. The other three reluctantly dropped Bob off before continuing on their mission. Bob's information gave investigators the first real lead, detailed descriptions of 3 possible suspects and the vehicle used in the attacks. With this tip, the police honed in on Koenig, Carroll Chick, and Quack. The very next day, a SWAT team swept in and arrested all 3 teens at their Arvada homes. The 18-year-olds, all local high school seniors, were hauled in for questioning. Carroll Chick and Quack eventually gave statements, while Koenig lawyered up and remained silent. Confessions and accusations. Carroll Chick admitted to a disturbing history of thrill-seeking violence. He and Koenig had made a pact as blood brothers to throw rocks at random cars in the past, just for twisted fun. He confessed they all gathered rocks that night, but claimed Quack was the one who threw the fatal blow that killed Alexa. Quack confirmed he was in the truck that night and participated in the attacks, but insisted he wasn't the killer. He said he impulsively decided to join Koenig and Carroll Chick's deranged scheme to drop rocks off overpasses. While Quack admitted to throwing some rocks himself, he accused Koenig of launching the large boulder that struck Alexa's vehicle. Quack described hearing a loud boom and a railgun-like sound as the rock shattered through the young woman's windshield. He said the force was so great, it sounded like a block of concrete had hit the car. The teens watched in shock as Alexa's car veered off the road and crashed, the driver almost certainly dead or gravely injured. Instead of calling for help, the trio made a chilling decision. Quack claims they all agreed to circle back to the crash site to take a memento photo of the wrecked car with Alexa's body inside. But he denied being the one to throw the fatal rock. As Carroll Chick and Quack pointed fingers, Koenig remained tight-lipped. But the evidence increasingly placed him at the center of the crime. An arrest affidavit indicated Koenig was likely behind the wheel when the deadly attack occurred, meaning he was well positioned to throw the massive rock himself. Investigators also uncovered Koenig's disturbing social media history, which cast the attacks in an even darker light. Several people who knew Koenig came forward with an unsettling image he had posted on Facebook back in December 2022. It showed Koenig posing with a motorcycle sticker that read, "Just killed a woman feeling good." The quote seemed to come from a popular gaming YouTuber named TommyInit, who said the line while playing Minecraft. But given the timing, Koenig's post took on a disturbing foreshadowing of the very real murder he would later be accused of. Police also discovered Koenig and Carroll Chick's blood brother oath to stay silent if they were ever caught. And just one day after Alexa's death, Koenig secretly met up with Quack to coordinate their stories and denial of involvement if questioned. But the determined investigators built an overwhelming case, tying all 3 young men to the vicious crime spree that turned deadly. In May 2023, the trio was hauled before a judge to face charges, including murder. Staring ahead stoically with their hands cuffed, each teen was slapped with a slew of extremely serious charges for their alleged actions that night. Nicholas Carroll Chick, Joseph Koenig, and Zachary Quack were all accused of the same 13 crimes. These included 1 charge of first-degree murder for killing Alexa Bardell. There were also 6 charges of trying to murder other people in the attacks. On top of that, They faced 3 charges, each of second-degree assault and attempting first-degree assault with the rocks. Together, the charges conveyed the gravity of the teens' actions, a callous disregard for human life with deadly consequences. If convicted, they could face life behind bars for cutting short Alexa's bright future in such a cruel, senseless way. At the court hearing, only Carol Chick showed any visible unease, looking shaken as he exited. Quack mostly stared ahead blankly. But Koenig, the alleged ringleader, smirked to his lawyer at times, his demeanor unchanged. All 3 were jailed without bond while awaiting their trial. As news of the arrests spread, it sent shockwaves through the community. Neighbors and classmates were stunned to learn the quiet teens in their midst were accused of such a heinous act. Some who knew Koenig said they weren't entirely surprised, citing past instances of troubling behavior. But few could conceive of an evil so random and reckless. Community mourns. While the arrests brought some resolution, the community continued to reel from the profound loss of Alexa Bartow. Family and friends remembered the vivacious 20-year-old as an incredibly bright light, a young woman of deep faith and compassion who lived life to the fullest. Alexa had been thriving in her job at a flooring company and was deeply in love with her girlfriend. She had a tight-knit family and countless friends who adored her joyful, uplifting spirit. Her senseless death left a void that could never be filled. As the legal case against Koenig, Carol Chick, and Quack slowly ground on, the community rallied to honor Alexa's life. Candlelight vigils, fundraisers, and memorial rides were held in her name. An outpouring of support lifted up the Bartow family as they faced every parent's worst nightmare. Loved ones vowed Alexa's death would not be in vain, but rather a catalyst to spread more light in the world, as she had always done. The story of Alexa Bartow is a harrowing reminder of the fragility of life and the senseless cruelty that can strike in an instant. Her shocking murder reverberated deeply, shattering her family and an entire community. While her loss cut short a promising future, Alexa's legacy endures through the countless lives she touched and the lessons of love and resilience she leaves behind. As the suspects await their fate, the community comes together to ensure justice is served. But most of all, they unite in remembering Alexa, celebrating the brilliant light she brought to the world during her vibrant 20 years. Through continuing to share her story and her joyful spirit, Alexa's light shines on. In our final case, we delve into the sinister mind of Dana Sue Gray, the shopping spree serial killer. In the quiet corners of seemingly unremarkable suburban landscapes, where picket fences and manicured lawns veil the complexities beneath, stories emerge that challenge our perceptions of normalcy. Dana Sue Gray's 1994 murder spree stands as a haunting testament to the unnerving truth that darkness can lurk behind the facade of an ordinary existence. Dana Sue Gray's life began with a tumultuous childhood that cast a long and haunting shadow over her troubled path. Born on December 6, 1957, in Southern California, her entry into the world coincided with the unraveling of her parents' marriage. The fragility of their union became evident when just 2 years into Dana's life, her parents decided to part ways. Her father, Russell, a hairstylist, and her mother, Beverly, a former beauty queen and model, became protagonists in a narrative that would profoundly shape Dana's psyche. Beverly's proclivity for extravagant spending, often exceeding the limits of Russell's credit cards, created an atmosphere of financial strain and tension. On one occasion, Russell witnessed his wife, Beverly, assaulting a senior citizen in a fit of rage. And this proved to be the tipping point that catalyzed the end of the already failing marriage. The separation of Dana's parents at such a young age left an indelible mark on her early years. A strained relationship with her father ensued, with Dana choosing to forego regular visits. These early fractures in familial bonds set the stage for Dana's difficulty in forming positive connections with others, be they her mother, stepbrothers, or classmates. Dana's childhood was characterized by a series of troubling incidents, reflecting her inability to conform to societal norms. Acts of rebellion manifested in her mischievous behavior, including instances of peeing on her half-brother's bed, stealing money from her mother, and even resorting to destroying her cherished garments with scissors. These acts hinted at an underlying turmoil, a glimpse into a psyche grappling with unresolved issues. School, too, became a challenging environment for Dana. Frequently missing classes and fabricating excuses marked her academic journey. In a disturbing collaboration with a neighbor, Dana constructed a catapult to throw neighborhood cats into a pool, offering a troubling insight into her capacity for cruelty, even at a young age. Despite attempts at discipline by her mother, Dana's behavior remained resistant to regulation. However, the trajectory of Dana's life took a poignant turn when her mother, Beverly, was diagnosed with breast cancer. The nurse's compassion during her mother's hospitalization had a profound impact on Dana, who is now 14. Following Beverly's death in 1973, Dana, now under her father's care, embarked on a journey to fulfill her newfound ambition to be a nurse. Yet her path was filled with challenges. Evicted from her father's house after the discovery of marijuana in her room, Dana sought refuge with her boyfriend and skydiving instructor. During this period, Dana faced the troubling complexities of relationships. On 2 occasions, she became pregnant and was coerced into terminations, decisions which she held significant resentment towards. Working as a waitress became a means to fund her nursing degree at Saddleback College, a pursuit she initiated after her high school graduation in 1976. Despite the challenges, Dana forged ahead into adulthood, and from the outside it seemed like life took an ostensibly positive turn when she married her long-running on and off boyfriend, Tom Gray, in 1987. The couple purchased a suburban home in Canyon Lake, California, and engaged in various adventurous pursuits, such as windsurfing, mountain biking, and skydiving. They started a number of successful business ventures, but the facade of stability crumbled as financial woes mounted. Dana's careless spending habits soon put the newlyweds in considerable debt. A miscarriage and Dana's extramarital affair with a fellow musician in Tom's band further strained their relationship. With her marriage disintegrating, Dana sought solace in substances, indulging in cocaine, marijuana, and excessive alcohol consumption. The turbulence she experienced manifested in a profound struggle with emotional regulation. The consequences of her actions were severe: bankruptcy in March 1992, and dismissal from her nursing position at Corona Community Hospital the following year, due to the theft of prescription drugs, including Demerol. Desperation drove Dana to seek a meeting with her estranged husband Tom in February 1994, a plea that he wisely chose to decline, having kept his address and phone number hidden following their separation. It came to light later that Dana had secretly purchased an insurance policy which would have paid off the Canyon Lake house in the event of his death. A trifecta of job loss, spiraling substance abuse, and futile attempts to mend her fractured connection with her ex-husband set the stage for a nightmarish descent that stained the quietude of her Californian community. On Valentine's Day, 1994, Dana reportedly paid a visit to the apartment of Norma Davis, an 86-year-old woman from Canyon Lake, and a familial acquaintance of Dana who she had briefly lived with at a time. During the course of the visit, Norma was reportedly killed by Dana using 2 knives and a phone wire. Dana then proceeded to retrieve Norma's credit cards. Norma's corpse was found by a neighbor 2 days later. During their investigation, police discovered a Nike shoe print in the foyer, blood on a chair, a ripped-out phone cord, and no signs of forced entry. 2 weeks later, on the 28th of February, under the guise of borrowing a book, Dana went to the home of June Roberts, a 66-year-old woman, also from the Canyon Lake community. Accompanying her at the time was her boyfriend's 5-year-old son, who was sat patiently waiting in her Cadillac, as she entered the home. Upon entering, Dana snatched June's phone cable from the wall, using it to choke her to death and leaving with her pocketbook. Following this, she went on a shopping binge, using June's credit card for an upmarket cafe lunch, getting her hair and eyebrows waxed at a salon, and shopping for a black suede jacket, multiple pairs of cowboy boots, diamond earrings, and a pair of shoes at the high-end mall. To end the trip, she purchased bottles of alcohol and casually threw in a plastic police helicopter toy for her lover's son. The following day, Dana went on yet another buying binge, driving to a resort to enjoy a massage. On March 10, 1994, Dana visited an antique shop in Lake Elsinore, looking to buy a picture frame for a photo of her late mother. The cashier there was 58-year-old woman, Dorinda Hawkins. Dana attempted to kill Dorinda by strangling her with a yellow nylon rope. Dorinda passed out, but unbeknownst to Dana, ultimately regained consciousness some 40 minutes later and alerted the police. Assuming Dorinda dead, Dana took $25 from the register and a few dollars from Dorinda's purse. None the wiser, Dana went on another spending binge, using June Roberts' credit cards about an hour after her vicious attack. Despite the gruesome nature of the crimes, Dana managed to evade detection with an eerie skill. There was no direct physical evidence linking her to the murders, leaving law enforcement grasping at straws in their quest for justice. Her ability to commit heinous acts without leaving a trace challenged the conventional notions of criminal investigations. In fact, due to the lack of credible leads early on in the case, a supervisor in charge at the time even suggested the use of a psychic. With things so unclear, some residents believed the murders could be a series of cult killings. As the community reeled from the shock of Dana's murders, Detective Joseph Grieco emerged as the driving force behind the pursuit of justice. The challenges facing Detective Grieco were formidable. Lack of physical evidence at the crime scenes added an extra layer of complexity to an already perplexing case. The detective, however, approached the investigation with a relentless determination to bring closure to the grieving community. An initial suspect for the murder of Norma Davis was Jerry Armbrust, the deceased's former daughter-in-law and the wife of Dana's father, Russell Armbrust. Due to the seemingly unusual nature of someone caring for the mother of an ex-husband, and the fact she had access to Davis' house, suspicions rose among detectives. However, after weeks of questioning, Detective Grieco, now lead investigator, determined that Jerry could not be the suspect, and the rapport that they built through their conversations eventually became key in helping to find the true killer. On the 16th of March, claiming to be lost, Dana knocked on the door of 87-year-old Dora Beebe, another elderly resident of Canyon Lake. Despite never having met her, Dora invited Dana into her home to use a map. After hitting Dora over the head with an iron, Dana strangled her to death with a telephone wire and, following her usual pattern, went shopping at a local mall within an hour of the murder. However, things did not transpire as she had gotten accustomed to. Later that day, notably due to the detailed descriptions provided to the police by Dorinda Hawkins, as well as information from Jerry Armbrust, a search warrant was issued for Dana's home. That evening, she was apprehended at her house whilst cooking dinner for her family. Detectives discovered several of the goods she had bought using the proceeds of her murderous crime spree, as well as the credit cards of June Roberts and Dora Beebe. Initially, Dana denied taking any credit cards, but shortly after claimed she had simply found and used them due to an overwhelming need to shop. All detectives that interviewed her noted her coldness and complete lack of sympathy for the victims. They made numerous attempts to get a confession from Dana, but with no success. It was only when greater circumstantial evidence began to develop and Dana was made aware that the deputy diva had requested the death penalty that she decided to plead insanity to her charges. As more witness evidence came forth, she eventually changed her plea to guilty of robbery, 2 counts of murder, and 1 attempted murder. On October 16, 1998, Dana Sue Gray was sentenced to life without the possibility of release, putting an end to over a month of terror in the community of Canyon Lake. Dana Sue Gray's life story is not just a chronicle of crimes, but a deep dive into the complexities of her psychological makeup. The cold brutality of Dana's murders stood in stark contrast to the casual nature of her subsequent shopping sprees, painting a surreal juxtaposition of the mundane and the malevolent. Yet, what made this spree even more unnerving was the methodical manner in which Dana executed her crimes. The murders were not impulsive acts or crimes of passion commonly associated with female killers. They were part of a carefully planned sequence, seemingly driven by an insatiable desire for material possessions. This twisted combination of violence and consumerism painted a portrait of a murderer who seamlessly transitioned from grievous brutality to personal indulgence within moments. The peculiar way in which Dana's life mirrored that of her mother, from her excessive spending habits, broken marriages, multiple miscarriages, and violent tendencies, is also notable. But could this really be the full picture? The Canyon Lake community, while grateful for the capture of the perpetrator, continued to grapple with the aftermath. The wounds inflicted by Dana Sue Gray's murders ran deep, leaving scars that extended beyond the confines of the crime scenes. The aftermath showcased the fragility inherent in even seemingly secure and affluent neighborhoods, and the unsettling reality that such horrors could occur in their midst. The resilience of the Canyon Lake community became a central theme in this chilling tale. The fear that Dana's reign of terror had sparked had not broken the community's spirit. Rather, it had strengthened their resolve to face the evil that lay within. Neighbors leaned on each other for support, creating a network of strength that would prove crucial. Dana's eventual capture provided reprieve for the community, but it did not quell the questions. The motivations behind her crimes remained elusive, the selection of her targets perplexing, and the possibility of undiscovered crimes cast a shadow over the resolution. As the community sought to heal, the unanswered questions lingered, creating a haunting legacy that would forever be etched into the fabric of Canyon Lake's history. This was Agent Magpie. And remember guys, be good. And if you can't be good, be careful.